you can evaluate how well it's working, check up with them and ask them about it again. Talk to the parents if you can, talk to the school. So don't just feel as helpless as they do. And it's easy to get helpless when they feel helpless. Because then you're like, oh, what else can be done? But really sort of like use your team and think of a plan. Okay, it's a good question, yeah.
I have a question just because this is something that came up. We're not mandated reporters, but can we choose to report something?
So-
If so, how?
Yes, so if you guys are not mandated, but certainly if you want to report something, you can. And so there's the child abuse website, which I think I had it on here, do I? Maybe I don't. I can email it to you guys, okay?
We had an instance because we work, one of our sites is late on a Friday afternoon and we couldn't get in contact with any school administrators since they'd all gone home and we just couldn't get in contact with them until Monday. And they were kind of upset that we didn't bring it up earlier because it exceeded like the 48-hour deadline or something, so I was just.
Yeah, there's the CAMRA website, Child Abuse Neglect Reporting Act, the website. There's DCS, California DCFS, Los Angeles County DCFS actually, Department of Child and Family Services. They have a website, they have a phone number, they have a 24-hour line, they have a website. So if you just Google them, Los Angeles County Department of Child and Family Services, LA's County DCFS, their number will come up and you can get access to them. And there's an online form and there's also a phone call form. Okay? Yeah.
If we were to like report something ourselves, like and stuff like that, like what kind of things, like what's the process kind of like? Yeah, like what should we? Like,
So what happens is they're pretty specific about what they want to know, and so you have to be prepared to give up a lot of detail to the extent that you know it. So they're going to want to know the child's name, their address, their phone number, who the perpetrator is, the incident in detail that happened. We're going to want you to put all that down. So what'll happen is somebody will call. It's like a intake line almost, and then you'll give them all the information, and they'll give you like a confirmation number that report was taken. Now they might say we're not going to take that report because there's a lot of parameters around what they'll take and what they won't take. So they might not take a report. Like say for instance, Johnny, your student, was in Louisiana and their father like molested them or something like that. They're not going to take that report in LA County, okay? Because you need to then call Louisiana, okay? So there's lots of parameters like that are around it. So they'll tell you we're going to take this report or not, and they'll take an anonymous report. So you don't have to give up your name, right? You can say I want to report something anonymously, and you can give them the information. They're supposed to take the report, and if they don't take the report, then you call back and get another person. Okay? If you really want to call up on somebody. Does that make sense? And that's a good question. So you are a voluntary reporter, and just because you're a mandated reporter at UCLA, when you're walking down the street and somebody like smacks a kid, you're not a mandated reporter like in your everyday life. Just because you're in this volunteer situation, you are by proxy or vicariously a mandated reporter in the circumstance where you're representing UCLA, but it doesn't make you like I'm not even a mandated reporter if like my neighbor, abuses their partner. I'm not a mandated reporter of that. But I am in my job, okay? Any other comments or questions? Yeah.
You were talking earlier about what to do if there's suspicion, reasonable suspicion, and is it appropriate to ask a child, or?
You ask enough to confirm or deny your suspicions,
Okay.
and if you're still unclear about it, consult.
Okay.
But you don't have to get a whole lot of detail, right? So you're not mandated to get every gruesome detail. All you're just trying to figure out is like, are they in danger? Like you have to ask yourself, is this child in danger? Has this child been in danger of being treated poorly? That's really the guiding principle, okay? So if they say something like, they're 12 years old, my grandmother used to burn me, but she stopped 2 years ago. What about that? Are you reasonably suspicious?
You might say, you might clarify that they stopped, or. ask the child, but then drop it.
But you're aware that a minor was abused.
Yeah.
So if they're still a minor and they were at some point abused, you still might want to consult with whatever entity you're working with. Maybe grandma died, then they're no longer a threat. But if grandma's still alive and living in the house, you know, then you might have more reasonable suspicion. But if grandma died, you're not having much suspicion, right? Yeah.
So there isn't a time frame on like reporting things? Like,
So because a minor is at risk until they're 18, when they're a minor, if something bad happened to them like that there could still be some potential danger, once you become suspicious of it, you want to consult and get more information. Because at the point at which then you've confirmed I'm suspicious, then the time frame starts. But if you still need more information or you want to consult about it, the clock isn't on yet. But you have some question about it. Okay? Does that make sense? Yeah.
Could you even file a report if you weren't sure of who the perpetrator was? Or no?
It's actually really difficult. It's really difficult to do, but you can. Like if you know enough about where the kid lives and they can do an investigation. Because what will happen after, so you do your report, you get your little confirmation number, and then it goes into the abyss. What really happens is that they have 5 days to respond, 2 days if it's like really urgent, or I think it's like within 24 hours, I can't even remember the timelines. But a social worker will go out into the house. And it doesn't necessarily mean that that day that kid is getting taken out. A lot of times there's an investigation. The goal is not to break up families. The goal is to do reparatory steps to the extent that can be done. Right? So the goal is family preservation often. So if it's feasible, what they might do is maybe it's an immigrant family who like spanking is what it is. And like, you know, that's not necessarily okay here to you know, spank the belt, but it might be wherever they came from. And so at that point, they might do some education in the family, right? So they wouldn't necessarily break up the family. Now, if there's like real danger, they might remove the kid. That's why you can't make any promises about what's going to happen in the process. So what will happen is that likely they will do an investigation, a social worker will come out. And they'll figure out what happened and then they'll figure out appropriate steps. But you're not involved in that piece. You have to have a master's in social work for that. Does that make sense? And again, this isn't all the time going to happen or likely, but once or twice a year, this may come up, so I just want you guys to be prepared for it. So you want to make sure it's 0 week that you guys have a protocol in place, that you know everybody's phone number on your team, that you have access to everybody's email, that you have in your cell phone the number for at least the CAPS direct line. You know, 310-825-0768. That you have the number for at least UCPD, if nothing else. 825-1491. Yes.
So can you see the CAPS in the chat?
Oh, CAPS is 310-825-0768. 310-825-0768. And at least UCPD in your phone. 310-825-1491. Now they may not be able to come out, maybe you're in Rosemead, UCPD is not going to Rosemead. But what they might do is help you to figure out what you need to do. Okay? And if you find yourselves in danger, you need to be able to be in communication with each other, okay? So that's like at least one piece of the protocol, at least having numbers and names and a clear understanding of like if it is after hours and I need to consult on this, who is my leadership or who is my person that then we come back to and talk together, okay? You have a question? And so then you want to be a support for each other, okay? So ask yourself, you know, when you're determining your boundaries for self-care, now this is more broadly, especially when you're working with the preteen and the teens, you have to ask yourself some questions. Determine your own boundaries and establish them early in communicating expectations as in your role as a peer helper with your students or a mentor. So let's say you're working with a 14-year-old. They have Facebook, they have Twitter, they have Instagram, they have Tumblr, they have all this stuff. Do you want to be their Facebook friend? Do you want them to have your cell phone number? Do you want them to have your email? So if, rather than just like them asking and you having to decline, it may be of use to you to say up front, you know, this is my role, I'm gonna be mentoring you. Here's when I'm available and here's how I'm available. I'm available whenever you're there. I'm here on Wednesday afternoons from 4 to 8. So that they don't have the expectation that then when they request you on Facebook and then you have to decline and then you have to have that conversation. Okay? So tell them up front, I'm available for the next 3 days, I'm available on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. When they do have a question or problem and they can't talk to you, who can they talk to? Are there teen hotlines you want them to talk to? You're encouraging them to talk to their parents if they're little kids. Like little kids aren't gonna have this issue if they're 7 years old. Like I have a 7 and an 8-year-old. They're not gonna be like, can I call you? You know, but a 10-year-old might, right? When and how much are you available to your students? Consider who is available and how you're available when there's no one else, right? Any questions about that or comments? Then you ask yourself, how much am I able to help? You need to be asking yourself, is this something I need to be keeping private? Should I be consulting with others? Is this an emergency? How will I communicate my concerns? Again, if you're a 15-year-old and they could feel like you breached their trust, you might want to have a conversation with them ahead of time. If they're 7, they don't even know about privacy. So you don't have to work as hard to like explain that to them, you know. Does that make sense? So it's how much am I willing to help? When am I available? What do I need to tell my students to set up the parameters? This is our relationship, and unfortunately, we can't be Facebook friends or other kinds of friends, but we can be, this is the way I'm available to you, and I'm excited to support you in this way, right? And if they say you get the one student who's like, why can't we be friends? What would you say to them? What's the reason? Yes?
Well, sometimes we just, like when kids ask that, sometimes we just blame like policy, like, oh, well, it's like the organization policy that.
That's fine.
It's
That's good enough for me. You know, UCLA really doesn't allow us to be friends in this way with our students. Good enough for me. And they understand rules. Well, I won't tell anybody. Let's just say you get that student. I'm not going to tell anybody. Then what? Let's be prepared for this rather than like it's sprung on us.
How about I want to keep you safe?
I want to keep you safe. Right? I want you to feel like you can have your privacy. Do you really want me to read all your Facebook posts? Like, do you really want me to see all your pictures? Let's just keep our relationship in this way. That way you can have your life. And I can have mine. It's good role modeling to teach people boundaries. Okay? Especially in this day and age where there are no boundaries. It's good to say, like, here, this is my space, this is yours. We can come together, but we don't have to be, we can have some separate space, right?